Hey everybody, welcome back to Joyful Homestead. We're out here on a beautiful sunny spring morning, and it's time now to cultivate our blackberries in the spring. They've overwintered really well and they're starting to come out, and I want to show you some of the things that I do here on our homestead in order to get an abundance of blackberries come June. This is the state that I find my berry patch in when I start coming out here in the early spring. There's some old canes that have died off and the newer canes have come on. There are grasses and weeds that are growing up. I really do need to do some cleaning up here for sure. But there are so many signs of life, strong life that I see here, including like this little ladybug right here that I see. And that is great. She's eating the eggs and the aphids that might come out in the spring. It's going to be a really great spring. I want to show you though exactly the things that I do, basically 3 steps that I do to cultivate my berries in the spring. I clean up, and then I evaluate and I train plants. And then the third thing I do is I want to make sure I water heavily and mulch to start the spring growing season. Let's go ahead and start that right now. All right, before we start really doing any work on evaluating, I need to clean this up. And so we're going to start just clipping away the weeds and the grasses, because we don't even know what we've got down there. We see one coming up, but we may have other canes that are starting. I want to work on this and get this down to where we can see the soil again. All right, we are now done with cutting back the weeds and the grass. We can see what we've got here. So we have one cane, we have one Floricane that is coming out, and the rest of it looks like it is last year's growth and doesn't have anything on it. So it is dead. I'm gonna cut that off. I'm gonna cut down right at the base here. We have the one side that is alive, the other side was dying. And this big one here probably is loose enough where I can get it at the base. I might have to get a bigger cutter for that. Yeah, a bigger cutter for those. But some of this stuff can be pulled out. Some of it releases, because it's all dry, it releases by itself and it just volunteers out. So that's what we're looking at right now. I'll use some bigger cutters for these, and we'll talk a little bit about what the next step is. All right, so I'm gonna leave this one simply to brace the tender Floricane that we've got on there, and everything else is ready to go. My next step after I clean up and is that I evaluate what is alive here. We need to define terms, and there are 2 terms I want you to understand. On this other plant, we have 2 different types of canes. So the first cane that we see is called a Floricane. That is 2nd year growth. So it was growth last year, and I had cut it back and it overwintered, and now it will be the fruit bearing, flower bearing plant, part of the plant this year. That's what I will want to train on my trellis wires. The second type of cane that you will see, and this is a great example, this is called a Primacane. Prima 1, 1st year growth. Easy to remember, right? 2nd year growth, and then 1st year growth. Nothing will grow on this year, or not until the fall at least. Sometimes we have 2 season bearing fruit, but in most cases, the Primacane won't have any fruit this year. This will be one that I'll train up, and I will just prepare it for next spring when it will look like this. And you can tell a little bit of the difference. This is fresher looking. This usually has some purplish, that sort of thing, and they're usually leaning to the side. These are usually more upright, and they come from the base. Remember, blackberries like to spread out from the base. So now back to our original plant. We know that this is a Floricane, and it was laying kind of flat. It's last year's 1st year growth, this year's 2nd year growth. And so I want it to be trained to be able to be upright and spread along my wires here. That will give it the most air to be able to flower. And you can see it has some things that it's doing. It wants to shoot out roots here. There will be flowers on it soon. You'll see it budding out. There's a bud right there, in fact. So that one will be a fantastic producer this year. It will grow really fast. Now I've tied it up so it has support, and the next thing to do really is to water it. Here is a Floricane that was last year's Primocane and is now ready this year to do its thing. You can see flowers are already coming out, which is fun, and more flowers. Each of these is going to be a berry or a cluster of berries. Notice that I've trained this in such a way where there's enough space, enough ventilation, enough air to get between things. You don't want everything to be clumped up. But I've trained this whole plant to come along this wire. And these were very small and upright last year. And as they started growing out and getting leggy, I just tied them to these wires and then they do their own thing. So at the end of the season, at the base of the plant, after this is all fruited, these will start getting brown. The leaves will start getting brown and they'll start dying off. The base of the plant will then start growing new Primocanes. That will be next year's Floricanes. And so the process continues to rotate through year after year. Just to clarify, all of this right here is one Floricane. Each of these branches this year will flower. There is a second smaller cane right here at the base, so there are really two in this area, but the majority of this is one flowering cane that will produce this year, but not next year, because it will be replaced. It will die off and be replaced by Primocanes that will start growing up about midsummer. So my job is to make this as efficient a cane as possible, as long as it has life. And so I want to give it lots of space. I want to make sure I train it along, give it support, and allow it to grow through the spring. The question sometimes arises with Blackberry owners: how much do I prune and when do I prune? Well, there are a couple of answers to that. I tend in the fall to do a first pruning. I prune back as far as I can the old spent Floricanes. And they can even go to the ground if they're totally spent. The Primocanes, I only prune back if they are becoming leggy. And I allow them, and I'll even train them in the fall, and I'll allow them to grow up, even a little bit in the winter. We're in a warmer climate, and so we have that luxury. I would say, though, if you're propagating blackberries in northern parts of the country, you may want to cut your Primocanes and your Floricanes to the ground when it is fall and winter time because of the colder weather. Remember that a Primocane knows that it's going to become a Floricane next year. So when you cut it back, it's not going to mess it up. It will grow back out and it will flower and fruit the next season, which is an important thing to know when you're a little worried about pruning. In the spring, I do a second pruning. It is a much less invasive pruning than the one in the fall. And it really affects only those parts of the plant that have been damaged over the winter. For example, you can see this looks like it has died, it's been frostbitten or something. So I'm just gonna snip that right off of there. Again, it's much less invasive, and you can even cut the Floricanes back in order to give them space and give them the energy they need for the parts of the plant that are actually gonna grow. Here's another one right here that's not any good. I'll just clip that off right there and discard it. Of course, when I clean all of this up, I'll be able to see more if there are any other places. But a second pruning in the spring is often warranted with the method of allowing the plants to be leggy over the winter. So you may ask why I allow my plants to get so leggy over the winter. Well, it's because I can actually get some free plants when they propagate themselves in the soil. For example, you can see that this one here has been cut. I actually cut that because this plant started over to my left, way over there, 2 tires down, and it planted itself over here in this one. And it's rooted in well. And now it has become its own separate plant. So I just cut that. This will propagate up as a Floricane this year, and the other side will also fruit as well. I have one that's in process, and I'll show you that one here up above. This one has come from way over there, and I've trained it along, and it's gotten so long, but it's gotten down to the ground, and I put it in a little pot down here. Now you notice that it's not cut yet because the root down here on the terminal side has not yet matured. And so when it matures and it becomes its own plant, then I'll just probably snip that off there, train it, and have a separate plant that I can replant anywhere I want. One last thing to do in order to make sure your blackberries have a great and abundant fruiting season. That is to water and to mulch your blackberries. A good early season heavy watering is really important. I like to water with the heavy jet setting on my garden hose in order to get that way down into the soil first of the season. And you want to make sure that it doesn't touch any of the tender roots or the tender leaves or the stalks, and just give it a really heavy watering around the drip line of where you believe that the root system is. When I do this early in the spring, it allows for the plant to relax. It's got enough resources now to kind of hold its anchor there and spread up to the sky. One other benefit of this that's really great is that you can knock down any weeds and grasses and kind of break those up in order to allow the blackberry root to have more expansive space without any competition. I usually water about 3 or 4 gallons for each of my canes. Oh, you want to focus on the Floricanes, of course. Once you have that heavily watered, you'll actually start to see it bubbling at the surface. A little bit of muddiness right there. That's a good sign, because that means that it's getting soaked to the base. This will really jumpstart your blackberries in the spring. Your blackberry canes are going to need about an inch of rain a week, just like any other garden plant. So in those seasons when it's drier and you're not able to get that in the rainfall, just go ahead and add a couple of gallons of water to the base of your plants each week. So one thing that can help with keeping that moisture in is mulch. And I have 2 different kinds of mulches that I use through the year. My first kind of mulch is pine straw. I use pine straw in the spring because it's loose. It doesn't pack down too much. It keeps that moisture in, and because berries love a lower pH level, it's pine, so obviously it keeps that pH level down in the acidic range, which it really likes to feed off of. And I get bales of this. They're just a couple dollars a piece. Cut that off and start stacking around the base of my Floricanes. You can pack it in pretty good because it is loose. It will still allow moisture from the rain to get down in. You don't want to impede any of the growth, though, from the base of the cane itself. In the fall, I use a different kind of mulch. I use pine chips instead of pine straw. They're matting a little bit thicker, and they make a really nice compacted base in order to keep the warmth in, obviously to keep moisture in. They seem to do better in the winter, and they allow for the Primocanes from last year to stay overwintered well. Well, that's it regarding cultivating blackberries in the spring. You clean up around the base of the plant. You train up and nurture the plant and tie it off when you can. Do a little bit of pruning, and then make sure to water and mulch. And you should have a really abundant and yield-filled season, and you'll have lots of blackberries on your canes. I'm so excited for you to put these things into practice. We do have a video for late season blackberry nurturing that we posted last fall. We'd love for you to see that one. We'd love for you to see all the content on our channel and become part of our community. We love it when people respond and comment in the comments below. It's really exciting to do this, and we hope that you have a great growing season. Blessings from our homestead to yours.